guys, welcome back to the Spin Cycle podcast. This is episode 2 of season 4 of the podcast, and today we are going to get into something that has been discussed at length, but I do want to kind of lay out the facts and go back in time a little bit. So today we're going to be talking about the downfall of Diddy. We're going to be doing a deep dive. A couple things that I want to get out of the way. First thing, this is a disclaimer. Facts will be stated as facts, but some of this is speculation, and I do not want to conflate the two. I'll do my best to clearly distinguish between them throughout, but when something is a quote or a line from a indictment or document or anything like that, I'll make sure to specify that these are facts and here's the source. And then some other things I'll say allegedly. So please pay attention to that language before you go and repeat things that I say in here. In addition, I'm going to be talking about some very sensitive subjects, including physical and sexual violence. So if you do not want to hear about these themes, I'd recommend skipping this episode. No hard feelings. However, I promise I'll present this in the most sensitive way possible. And lastly, I know that pretty much everyone has heard at least some chatter about Diddy and this whole legal proceeding. The most chronically offline could not have missed it, but you may not know about all of the lore. So, turning back the clock 1 year, Diddy was on top of the world. He received the keys to the city of New York last year in September of 2023. He also was recognized as a global icon by the VMAs. He was flying high, living large, he was everywhere and being publicly celebrated until November of 2023 when Cassandra Ventura, aka Cassie, who sang the song Me and You, which was everywhere in the early 2000s, she filed a lawsuit accusing Diddy of rape and years of abuse. She alleged that not long after she met him at 19 in 2005, he started to control her and abuse her, including giving her drugs, beating her, and forcing her to have sex with a lot of male prostitutes while he filmed the encounters. In 2018, the lawsuit claims that near the end of their relationship, Sean Combs, aka Diddy, forced his way into her home and raped her. That all came out last November, and that was everywhere in the news, and Diddy came out with this statement saying it was all categorically false, blah blah blah, but I'm not going to get into his statements because I don't fucking care what he has to say. Then in May of this year, the video came out. I'm sure a lot of you already know what I'm talking about. There was a video that was surveillance footage from a hotel in Los Angeles where Cassie was clearly trying to escape. The video is taken in the hallway of the Intercontinental Hotel in LA, and it's alleged that a freak off was taking place in the hotel. You can see in the video that Diddy comes running out of the hotel room after her in a robe and beats her while she's on the ground. He takes a lamp or something off of a table and throws it at her and then drags her back to the hotel room by her hair. Later, Diddy made another fucking statement where he posted a video to Instagram talking about how that was one of the worst moments in his life and blah blah blah. But I mean, he had just basically called her a liar after her filing the lawsuit. So now that he's acknowledging that it's something he's ashamed of is just so silly. But again, not reading that statement or anything because fuck that guy. And then the worst part of this, in my opinion, is that he paid off the Intercontinental Hotel to not release this footage to the authorities or anyone else. He paid them $50,000. This hotel is no longer an Intercontinental Hotel in LA, so there's unfortunately nothing we can do to punish them. So a second ago, I used the term freak off, and if you haven't been following the story closely, that might sound insane to you. But essentially what a freak off is these parties that Diddy would host that were drug-induced sex parties where people would just be getting freaky and doing drugs, and it's one thing, to have sex parties, but there were sex workers, some of which were underage, and also just in general underage attendance at these sex parties that were fueled by drugs and alcohol and just freak offs. That's why they're called freak offs. No better way to. The indictment describes freak-offs as elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, and masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. So recently, on September 15th, Diddy was officially indicted on federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges. The indictment covers like very explicit details of his alleged assault of several women since 2008. He's accused of, quote, verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, and that he, quote, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims at times by their hair, and assaults that took days or weeks to heal, end quote. According to authorities, these encounters would last sometimes for days on end and often involved multiple sex workers, with Diddy drugging the participants to keep them obedient and compliant. The raids of Diddy's LA and Miami homes resulted in the seizure of supplies for these freak-offs, including drugs and, as I'm sure you've heard at this point, 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. So that's the present, but let's do a little deep dive on the past. There have been so many rumors and just like funky things said about Diddy over the years. It's always kind of been this open secret, kind of similar or comparable at least to Harvey Weinstein, where everybody kind of knew that if you were to go to one of his parties, you should expect to see some weird shit, and that you probably don't want to be alone with this man. One person who has never necessarily come out against Diddy but has made some interesting comments is Usher. So when Usher was just 13 and trying to get his foot in the music industry door, he actually spent a year living with Diddy. And in a 2016 interview with Howard Stern, he opened up about that experience a little bit, saying that things were a bit off. He said he didn't really understand what he was even looking at, and, quote, very curious things were taking place, end quote. He actually did say that he wouldn't want his own kids attending, quote, puffy camp like he did. And then on top of that, his protege, Justin Bieber, spent like 48 hours with Diddy as well, and there's some speculation that Bieber later gave Diddy a fake phone number because he wasn't like comfortable with him. And then I'm sure a lot of people have seen the video of Diddy like patting down Justin to like see if he's wearing a wire at one point. It's like a really strange video, but that's just kind of, again, like speculation. Some other comments come from Kanye West and the Kardashians. In a 2014 episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Khloe talked about going to a Diddy party where everyone was, quote, butt naked. And then Kanye West said in 2022 that Diddy was a Fed, claiming that he sold people out to avoid jail time, which honestly sounds pretty believable to me, but I don't know. And then now, of course, he's like so famous for saying crazy shit. So it kind of like just blended into the backdrop of Kanye saying insane shit in 2022. I'd say that was when he was like at his craziest, but it's hard to like completely dismiss that. So yeah, I don't know. Then of course there's Kim Porter, Diddy's late wife, the mother of, I believe, 2 of his children. You might have seen that her alleged memoir went viral after the indictment, but her children that she shared with Diddy say that it's fake, which I don't know what to feel about that, because obviously like you see it all the time in true crime cases where like children of the parent accused of killing the other parent or doing harm to the other parent will choose to believe the living parent because it's the only parent they have left. So I like kind of take the kids' words with a grain of salt, because like of course you want to believe your father. So you might have seen that Amazon has actually pulled it. However, it details physical abuse and sexual exploitation. It names a lot of people. My mom actually read it, so let me read some texts from my mom. So a few things. It's only 59 pages because obviously she dies in the middle of writing it. And biggest bombshells, I believe, and the things that I think are like most relevant are the comments about the deaths of Biggie and Tupac. you might know about the connection between Diddy and the Tupac and Biggie murders. But if you're not familiar, let me break it down really fast. And by the way, this is not just a Kim Porter thing. This is not just like a scorned woman or like, you know, somebody, a fake memoir written as though it's like in this woman's voice. This is something that other people have connected him to, including people like Eminem. So both Biggie and Tupac died in 1996, something like 3 months apart. But 2 years before that, in 1994, the best year ever, because that's when I was born, Tupac was shot the first time. That's the shooting that prompted Biggie's song, Who Shot Ya? After that shooting, Tupac openly accused Biggie and his label, Bad Boy Records, which is, of course, Diddy's label, of having the role in the incident because they, like, didn't react, I guess, when he limped into the studio covered in blood. This is what he said to Vibe magazine in 1995. He said, quote, "Nobody approached me. I noticed that nobody would look at Puffy was standing back too. I knew Puffy. He knew how much stuff I had done for Biggie before he came out." And recently, the family of Tupac is considering filing a wrongful death suit against Diddy. And they hired Alex Spiro, who has worked for Elon Musk and Megan Thee Stallion, for investigation. So the legal move, this is according to page 6, the legal move came after it was revealed that the man currently charged with Tupac's death, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, suggested in a 2009 interview with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police that Diddy put a $1 million hit on Tupac. Tupac and Biggie thing, basically it was like an East Coast, West Coast rivalry, but it involved their labels. So Biggie on the East Coast was signed to Bad Boy, and Tupac on the West Coast was signed to Death Row, which was owned by Suge Knight and is now owned by Snoop Dogg. So basically, in 1994, Tupac shot 5 times and robbed in the lobby of a recording studio, and then he like limps in, and then that whole thing happens. Then in 95, Notorious Big IG records a song called Who Shot Ya? And that's basically a taunt reminder of the 1994 shooting. Then June 1995, on stage at the Source Awards in New York, Suge Knight insults Diddy and Bad Boy Records. Then in July, the next month, Biggie and Bad Boy hire members of the Southside Crips for protection against the Bloods, who work for Death Row, and then the two Compton gangs have a bloody 30-year rivalry. So that's fun. But in September 95, Death Row employee Jake Robles, a Blood, is shot outside an Atlanta nightclub, and a Bad Boy employee is suspected as being the shooter. So then, September 1996, Tupac and his Bloods bodyguards are in Vegas for a boxing match. And they, I guess, assault a Crip in retaliation for a previous incident. And then 2.5 hours later, Tupac is shot in a drive-by shooting on the Las Vegas Strip. And yeah, then 6 months later, I misspoke earlier, I said 3. 6 months later, in March 97, Biggie is gunned down outside the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles after a Soul Train Music Awards party. So obviously the labels Death Row and Bad Boy are in the middle of this feud and have gang ties as well. So it's interesting that neither case has ever been solved. And it's also interesting that Suge Knight, I feel got a lot of scrutiny and has always been kind of convicted in the court of public opinion throughout this whole thing, but we're just now kind of publicly naming Diddy as being involved in it as well. But all of this is detailed in Kim's book. She kind of accuses Diddy of knowing things about Tupac, and not just Tupac but Biggie as well. Allegedly Biggie was going to leave Bad Boy Records, so that would be the motivation for his murder. In her book, Kim also accuses Diddy of being in some kind of romantic relationship with Clive Davis, who is the founder of Arista Records. So that's interesting. My mom didn't get into detail. These are just like her bullet points that she's sending me. She said they had an open relationship and mostly threesomes. She liked Tupac, and Tupac wouldn't do threesomes with Diddy, only her. That is a verbatim text from my mom. So yeah, and then, you know, my response to that was, I don't think that Diddy's gay. I think he does do sexual things with men, but I think that he's the type that likes doing sexual things with men as a means of like power and control and domination. I don't really think it's necessarily about like his sexual orientation. That actually kind of brings me to another top of mind connection to this. There are so many connections to the Diddy case, so I am definitely not going to get into all of them, but for the sake of timeliness, I saw this TikTok. The user's name is Raksha _ is not ready. Ready spelled like the last name, Reddy. She says, when you find out that Jose Menendez, meaning the father of the Menendez brothers, which is like super relevant in the zeitgeist right now. When you find out that Jose Menendez was an executive at RCA Records, which owned Arista Records, founded by Clive Davis, which owned Bad Boy Records, founded by Diddy. Isn't that insane? So like, it's entirely possible that like there is just this like, I don't believe in the deep state or any of that like, you know, cabal of pedophile bullshit, but I do think that there's like a sector of specifically Hollywood and Washington DC that like they have to cultivate this like crazy like refined public image, even if it's like, even if you're a gangster, like they have to at least like portray, they have to walk the walk, they have to play the part. And so it's almost like they're so suppressed by that they then like do these weird, seedy, like nasty things in their like personal time, almost as a like reaction from the fame. Does that make sense? Like I'm not trying to make excuses or anything, but I do just like try to pathologize everything. And I think the only thing I can think of is like of why these people in power becomes like sexual deviants, for lack of a better term, is because they're so repressed in their like personality and their like they're not free. You know what I mean? Like they always say fame is a prison. I think people in that industry in general like just become so obsessed with their public image that like the facade behind like the tapestry is like so rotted. So that's just my little tangent, but like I am obsessed with the connection between RCA Records and the Menendez family and this story. It does make me actually wonder if that's why we're kind of like hearing about the Menendez brothers again, if that's like the timing, because it's not really an anniversary, you know what I mean? Like those murders also took place in 1996, the same year that Tupac was murdered. So it's all very weird. Another really weird connection to Kim Porter is Brittany Murphy. So Kim Porter, Diddy's first wife, the alleged writer of this alleged memoir, she died in 2018 of lobar pneumonia, and 9 years before that, Brittany Murphy died of the same affliction, and then her husband died like days later or something like that, maybe weeks, months later, but like very mysteriously and shortly after, back in 2009. So you might be like, okay, but what is Britney's connection to Diddy? Britney dated Ashton Kutcher at one time, who has like publicly been like very close to Diddy, which that's a whole other thing because of his fucking sex trafficking nonprofit that he ran, and then him writing in support of Danny Masterson for like a more lenient sentence as like a character witness. So that guy is, I like can't even talk about it. I'm so disappointed in him because that's like my like ultimate crush, Ashton Kutcher. So I'm like extremely disappointed in him. But anyway, back to Britney. She was also married to that guy, Simon Monjack. And I guess Simon had a relationship with Diddy as well. And there are lots of photos at Ashton and Britney at some of Diddy's events. And like I said, she died of the exact same affliction that Kim died of. but 9 years earlier. And then her husband and Diddy, they had the same personal trainer. Like, they were like running in the same circle. So it's entirely possible that she was connected to that. I just don't know what the motivation for that would be. There's also lots of suspicion that Simon killed her. So I mean, who knows? But I do think, like, in light of all of this new information, that we've got some nefarious activity at play. So, like I said, Diddy was indicted on September 15th. He was denied bail, but he's currently appealing his bail ruling. Details aren't available yet regarding the next steps of the trial, but like all of his kids and all of his like close family members had to turn over their passports. Like, he is not getting out of this, which is actually kind of crazy. So the Me Too movement took place 8 years ago, and it like shook Hollywood, but the exposing of Harvey Weinstein kind of like only then exposed like the film industry. Now the music industry is kind of having its own reckoning. I highly recommend Taylor Crumpton's Peace and Time. I always shout out Taylor. She's from Dallas, and I've actually been following her work since she was the arts and culture reporter at D Magazine. But now she's she's writing cover pieces for Time, writing for like the Grammys.com, like all kinds of stuff. So she is an excellent culture reporter to follow, but she specifically has a great piece on this. The headline is "Hip Hop Needs a #MeToo Reckoning." It was published on June 27th of this year. So highly recommend reading that. It's a really good breakdown of kind of what's happening and how like a culture of fear, she says, is governing hip hop. And I think we have, as a society, evolved past this, and like we have to start advocating for victims as opposed to like advocating for men to stay out of trouble. Like, I just don't understand how we are still in this place, you know. It's incredible that not just women, obviously, but any victims of sexual assault, physical assault, coercion, etc. It's insane that we're still defending the accused. But anyway, there's a lot of conspiracies flying around TikTok and Twitter and whatnot, and like, that's fun. Highly like encourage rabbit holes. I think that's fun. But just kind of remember that these celebrities are real people. So if you're like connecting them to something that is not true, that's like not cool. I think let's keep the conversation on Diddy right now, and whoever is named throughout this trial and throughout this investigation, we can skewer them publicly later, but let's wait for them to be named maybe in some kind of interview or indictment or, you know, witness statement. I think just dragging other people into this mess it kind of loses the plot, you know? I think let's focus on Bad Boy Records and Diddy and his circle of people who've done unforgivable things to each other instead of like speculating on who else is involved, because we'll find out. Don't worry. That's the episode today. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive on the downfall of Diddy. Say that 5 times fast. And more to come on this as the trial develops and as more people come forward, as I'm sure they will. We will discuss. Oh, I can't believe I almost forgot, but last week it was announced that more than 3,000 individuals have come forward to this Houston lawyer. His name is Busby. I don't know his first name, sorry. But he is the same lawyer who filed a $750 million lawsuit against Travis Scott after the Astroworld Festival tragedy. And he's also represented individuals accusing Deshaun Watson of sexual misconduct in 2021. So he's a very like high profile lawyer and represents victims. He has more than 3,000 people ready to come forward. Apparently there are other people involved. That's why I just gave that whole spiel, is because he added that they will be named as the other defendants at a later date. So we will find out who these other people involved are. So let's just not speculate because it's coming. So 3,000 people have come forward, and over 100 men and women have obtained legal representation to file civil suits against Diddy. So he held a press conference on Tuesday and said that they had been retained by at least 120 individuals to pursue cases in civil court. And some of the cases they intend to file will center on allegations of violent sexual assault or rape, sexual abuse, facilitating sex with controlled substances, false imprisonment, compelling prostitution, sexual misconduct, dissemination of video recordings, and sexual abuse of minors. And more than 55% of the victims, quote, reported this conduct either to authorities, that is the police, or to hospitals. So more than half of the 120 people, so 60 plus people, reported these assaults to either a healthcare professional or a law enforcement officer. Busby said that his firm is not filing a class action lawsuit. Rather, each case will be filed individually in various states, and Diddy will in some cases not be the only defendant cited. Says other individuals and entities may also be named based on the claims and the evidence that he's collected. So since November, Diddy has received 12 civil suits, 11 of which directly accused sexual assault. So he's only settled against one claim, and that's Cassie's. So we have a lot of information on this still to come, and there will be follow-up episodes to this. But yeah, make sure that you're doing your research before you're accusing people, because they can sue you. Don't forget, like, don't accuse people online of things because they can sue you. Okay, think about yourself and your wallet. So yeah, that's my spiel, and that is the episode today. I almost tried to sign off early without including that nugget. So more to come on Diddy and more to come on all things pop culture. I'll see you next week. Subscribe to the podcast, follow the Instagram at the Spin Cycle Media, and tell a friend. Share it on Instagram. Tag me and I'll tell you I love you and give you a kiss on the forehead. Okay, bye.